Have you ever sat in your favorite chair, maybe late in the afternoon when the house has gone quiet, and asked yourself, when did I become too much for them? Not out loud, just that silent question echoing in your heart. There's no single moment when it happens. No signpost that tells you your presence has started to feel inconvenient. It starts slowly. A sigh on the phone when you ask for a favor. A delay in their reply when you ask to come visit. The way their tone changes when they think you didn't hear them whisper, "She's just lonely." It's subtle at first, but you feel it. You feel it in your bones. And it hurts, not because you expect to be the center of their world anymore, but because, at this stage of life, all you really want is to be seen, not managed, to be respected, not tolerated, to be loved, without having to prove that you're still worth it. And if you've felt that, if you've ever sat in silence after a phone call or a family gathering and thought, why do I feel like a burden in my own family? Then this conversation is for you. You've given everything, decades of sacrifice, of sleepless nights, of care. You've put your children ahead of yourself more times than anyone could count. And now, when your body asks for more rest, when your heart longs for company, when you simply want to feel included, you begin to notice how often you're left out, spoken over, or brushed aside. That's not just aging, that's being overlooked. And being overlooked after a lifetime of giving is not something your heart should have to settle for. But here's the truth. However quiet and hard it may be to hear, the way others treat us often echoes the way we treat ourselves. Not always, not entirely, but often enough. And so the journey back to dignity starts with the choices you make today, not grand gestures, not dramatic confrontations, but steady, clear behaviors that protect your self-worth. Let me tell you about Grace. She's 74, a mother of 3, widowed 10 years. Her children love her, yes, but somewhere along the way, that love turned into convenience. They'd drop off their kids without asking if she had plans. They'd ask her to cook for gatherings, but rarely included her in the actual planning. She began to feel like staff in her own family. One Sunday, after being left out of a birthday dinner for her oldest granddaughter, one she helped raise, Grace, sat in her living room and cried for a long time, not out of rage, not even sadness. It was something quieter than that, a kind of mourning the version of herself who thought that always being available would guarantee closeness. It didn't. That week, she made a decision. She didn't yell. She didn't send a long message. She just began responding differently. When her daughter called that Friday to ask if she could watch the twins all weekend, Grace smiled softly and said, "No, honey, I've made plans this weekend. The plans: a walk in the park, a visit to the library, lunch alone at her favorite cafe." But they were hers. And for the first time in a long time, she chose her needs over their assumptions. The response was surprise, then confusion, then something else.
Respect.
Because the first powerful behavior when others treat you like a burden is this: choose yourself without guilt. It sounds simple, but it changes everything. Grace kept showing up for her family, but not as the invisible backbone. She showed up as a woman with a life. She accepted invitations when she wanted to. She said no when she didn't. And instead of explaining herself, she let her presence speak for itself. And over time, something softened in her children. They didn't stop asking, but they started asking with care. They stopped assuming she'd always say yes. And that pause, that newfound hesitation, was the first sign that they'd begun to notice her again. Frank, on the other hand, had a different journey. He's 69, quiet, steady, a retired mechanic with a deep love for jazz music and crossword puzzles. His son moved in temporarily during a hard patch 3 years ago. Since then, Frank's home became someone else's mess. His time, someone else's schedule. His voice, rarely heard. It wasn't loud disrespect. It was the slow erosion of space, of choice, of dignity. One evening, after another meal eaten alone while his son scrolled on his phone, Frank stood up and calmly said, "I love having you here, but it's time to make a plan for your next step. No anger, no blame, just truth." His son pushed back. accused him of being heartless. "You're supposed to help family." And Frank simply replied, "I did, and I will continue to, but not at the cost of my peace." The second powerful behavior: hold your space. Because when someone has taken too much from you, your time, your voice, your energy, holding space isn't just protection, it's healing. You're not pushing them away, you're showing them where you begin. The reactions won't always be kind, especially at first. People get used to the version of you that asks for nothing. When that changes, it unsettles them. But discomfort isn't danger, and their reaction isn't your responsibility. What is your responsibility is you, the way you speak to yourself in the mirror, the way you honor your own limits, the way you choose not to disappear just because it keeps the room calmer. You have nothing to prove. You're not behind. You're not broken. And you're not done becoming. There's something quietly painful about realizing that the people you love most have started to treat you like a task to be managed. They don't mean to. Not always. Life gets busy. Stress builds. They forget how much of you has already been given, but still it stings. And it's in those moments, the ones where you feel more like background noise than family, that you start asking yourself, did I somehow teach them that this is okay? Not by words, but by years of silent giving. And the answer, sometimes, is yes. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you did too much right for too long, without pause. You were dependable, selfless, constant, and without even realizing it, you set a pattern. You became the one who never said no, the one who carried everything with a smile. And over time, they stopped asking if you could, they just assumed you would. That's where things begin to slip. When love becomes expectation, when kindness becomes obligation, when your generosity starts to feel like your only identity. But it's not. You are not just the helper, the giver, the steady one. You're still a person with needs, limits, and a heart that deserves care. So what do you do when you wake up one day and realize the pattern no longer works for you? You begin to shift, gently, intentionally. And the third powerful behavior to remember when you're treated like a burden is this: speak without shrinking. Helen is 76. She's the kind of woman who keeps biscuits in a tin, who always remembers birthdays, who fills the silence with stories because she's afraid of what might be said if the silence lingers too long. Her children love her, but they also talk over her, make decisions around her, laugh off her worries as mom being dramatic. For years, she said nothing, smiled, nodded, swallowed her discomfort. But after a difficult Christmas, where her youngest child told her to just relax and let us handle things, she realized something profound. She had made herself so easy to dismiss. They stopped seeing her at all. So, she changed, not all at once, not loudly, but intentionally. The next time they discussed plans, she said calmly, "I'd like to be included in this conversation. My voice matters too." It stopped the room, not because it was forceful, but because it was true. And for the first time in a long while, Helen didn't feel invisible. She felt grounded. There's something quietly powerful about speaking with calm certainty, not raising your voice, not making demands, just saying, "This is what I think, this is what I need," and letting that be enough. It's uncomfortable at first, especially when you've been silent for so long. But every time you speak up, you're not just asking to be heard, you're reminding yourself that you deserve to be, and sometimes that's all it takes for others to begin remembering it too. But there's more to this change than just what you say. It's also how you show up for yourself in the spaces where no one else is watching. Ethan, who once stayed quiet just to avoid conflict with his grown daughter, started making a habit of writing letters to himself. Not to send, just to remember. He'd write, "You are not too much. You are not in the way. You are worthy of time, of rest, of joy." That's the fourth behavior, and maybe the most essential. Treat yourself as someone worth protecting, because if you don't, who will? Dignity doesn't begin with how others treat you. It begins with how you treat you. Do you eat well because you matter? Do you rest because your body deserves kindness? Do you stop apologizing for taking up space in your own home, your own life? It may sound simple, But these small acts of self-respect begin to build a foundation so strong, other people's treatment of you can no longer shake it. Frank, who used to tiptoe around his son just to avoid arguments, finally got honest with himself. "I've made myself smaller in my own house," he wrote once in his journal, "but this is my house, my life." So he began showing up differently. He started playing music again louder than before. He rearranged the furniture. He cooked for himself the way he liked it, even if no one else approved. And one day, his son asked, "Why the change?" Frank just smiled and said, "I decided to stop waiting for someone else to treat me like I matter. I started doing it myself." And that's the truth, isn't it? When others treat you like a burden, you have a choice. You can internalize it, shrink under the weight of their expectations, try harder, give more, stay quiet, or you can remember who you are. You can respond with behavior that reclaims your worth without ever needing to prove it. You can speak without apologizing. You can set limits without anger. You can prioritize yourself without shame. And in doing so, you teach others something vital, not just about respect, but about resilience. Because no one can carry your dignity for you. But once you begin holding it again, you'll be surprised how quickly others begin to follow. When you begin to treat yourself as someone who matters not just in your words, but in your actions, something quiet begins to shift. The weight in your chest lightens. The pressure to perform fades, and slowly, steadily, the parts of you that once felt buried start to come back into view. This change doesn't shout. It doesn't slam doors or burn bridges. It just breathes. And in that breath, your presence becomes stronger, not louder, but clearer. Not sharper, but firmer. And people notice. They don't always know what they're noticing at first. They might say, "You seem different lately." Or, "You've got something about you now calm, but grounded." That's because your energy has changed. You've stopped waiting for permission to be seen. You've stopped apologizing for taking up space. And even if others haven't fully caught up to that yet, you have. That shift in presence is what makes the real difference. Margaret, who once bent over backward to make everyone else feel comfortable, now protects her peace like it's sacred. And it is. She still shows love, still bakes for her family, still offers to help, but from a place of choice, not pressure. The difference is this. When she says yes now, it's because she wants to, not because she's afraid of what will happen if she doesn't. There's a quiet confidence in that, the kind that doesn't need approval to feel steady, the kind that says, "I belong to myself now." And you know what? Her children responded. At first, they were surprised. Her no's used to be rare. Her opinions used to come with disclaimers. But now, there's a pause, a moment of consideration. They ask differently. They show up more thoughtfully. Because when you honor yourself, you raise the standard of how others engage with you, even if no one says it out loud. And it's not just about how they treat you, it's about how you treat life itself. Helen, after years of caretaking and being dismissed, decided to reclaim something for herself. Joy, not productivity, not usefulness, just joy. She signed up for a beginner's watercolor class. The first time she walked in, she felt unsure, out of place among strangers and paint-stained tables. But she stayed. She let her hands make messy, beautiful things. And after a few weeks, she started to feel color come back into parts of her that had gone gray. Her granddaughter visited one weekend and saw the paintings laid out on the table. "Grandma, you did these?" Helen smiled, a little shy, but proud. "I did." There was a pause. "They're beautiful," her granddaughter said. "Can you teach me?" That moment didn't come from asking to be seen. It came from being fully, unapologetically, from living a life that reflects not just sacrifice, but fullness. When you stop living in reaction to how others treat you and start living in response to what your soul actually needs, people feel it, and it draws them in, not because you demanded their attention, but because you stopped chasing it. Ethan, who used to dread visits from his daughter because of how often she corrected him, found something similar. He didn't change her. He changed how he engaged. He stopped defending his every choice, stopped justifying how he spent his time. And instead, he began to listen without absorbing, speak without shrinking. And when she offered unsolicited advice, he gently said, "Thank you for caring. I'll let you know if I need help." The defensiveness left the room. The tension melted. And over time, their conversation softened too, because the truth is, most of us don't want to fight. We don't want to argue with the people we love. We just want to feel safe in our own skin, in our own homes, in our own voice. And when we create that safety inside ourselves, it ripples outward. You begin to move differently, hold your shoulders higher, walk into a room not as someone waiting to be noticed, but as someone who already knows their value. And even if they don't always say it, they feel it. There's a magnetism to someone who knows their worth. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to demand it. You just need to embody it. That's what Frank discovered too. The son who once lived under his roof without helping now visits once a week, brings groceries, cleans up after himself. Not because Frank laid down a list of rules, but because Frank stopped making his peace negotiable. He filled his home with music again. He invited people over who made him laugh. He turned off his phone when he needed stillness. And slowly, without words, he taught his son what dignity looks like when it's lived, not explained. This is the restoration we rarely talk about, the one that comes after the grief, after the disappointment, after the long stretch of being treated like less than you are. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's powerful. You begin to live with a kind of quiet sovereignty. You stop asking, "How can I make them love me better?" and start asking, "How can I love myself more completely?" And in that question, the answers come in boundaries, in softness, in joy, in rest, in truth. Because the real power isn't in changing them. It's in becoming someone whose light is so steady. No one can dim it again. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You only need to stand firmly in your light. If you're still here with me now, I want you to take a moment and breathe. Not the quick kind of breath we take when we're rushing through the day, but a real one. The kind that settles the body and reminds the soul, I'm still here. I'm still becoming, and I still matter. Because if this message found its way to you, I want you to know something very clearly. You are not alone in what you're feeling. You're not the only one who's ever sat in a quiet room, heart heavy, wondering how the people you love most came to see you as someone they have to handle. You're not the only one who's ever stared out a window and whispered, "I used to matter more, didn't I?" And you're not the only one who has started to wonder, deep in the privacy of your heart, if it's too late to feel fully respected again. But let me say this gently, and let it reach the part of you that's been quietly waiting to hear it. It is not too late. You are not too far gone, and you have not missed your chance to reclaim your voice, your presence, and your quiet power. There's something so deeply courageous about choosing to shift even now, about saying, "I won't be treated like a burden, even if I have needs," about saying, "I still deserve to be spoken to with kindness. I still have the right to say no. I still have dreams. Even if they're softer now, I still want to be seen." That takes strength. A kind of strength most people will never understand. So if you felt seen by anything we talked about, whether it was Frank reclaiming peace in his own home, or Grace choosing her time without guilt, or Helen picking up a paintbrush after years of being dismissed, then I invite you to bring your own story forward. You don't need to craft it perfectly. Just speak from the heart. Have you ever felt like your family sees you more as a duty than a delight? Have you struggled with being heard, being respected, or just being acknowledged as a full person after 60? Have you learned to set boundaries, or are you still finding your voice? If you feel comfortable, share your story in the comments, even just a line or two, because someone else might read what you write and feel less alone. And in that small connection between two hearts who've never met, there's healing. And if this message gave you something to hold on to, something to reflect on, something that whispered, "Yes, this is me," then I'd love for us to stay connected. If it feels right for you, click subscribe, not for the sake of numbers, not to follow a trend, but because you felt something true here, and truth is worth coming back to. This space is being made for people like you, people who are still evolving, still learning how to be soft and strong at the same time. People who aren't afraid to look back with honesty and forward with grace. This isn't just a channel, it's a place to breathe again, to be reminded that your worth didn't retire when you did, that your wisdom is not just useful, it's sacred, that your presence in a room should still carry weight, even if your hands are no longer as steady as they once were. And if no one's told you lately, let me be the one. You are not a burden. You are not forgotten. You are not too much. You are not past your prime. You are loved even in silence. You are worthy even when overlooked. And you still have every right to walk with dignity, to speak with purpose, and to live with joy. Let these 4 behaviors be your quiet armor, not to fight with, but to walk tall in. Choose yourself without guilt. Hold your space with steadiness. Speak without shrinking. And treat yourself like someone worth protecting, because you are. You always were. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for your trust, your openness, and your heart. I hope you leave this message not with heaviness, but with hope. You are not behind. You are just beginning again in a new way, with new strength, and with the grace of all the years that brought you here. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself, because you are still the light in the room, and the room still needs your light.